A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Let's update this week's political agenda with the Australian Christian Lobby. Engaging conversations always, and on a Monday we like to check in with the ACL. Jacob Hill is the Australian Christian Lobby State Director for Western Australia. Jacob, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thanks so much for having me, Neil.
Hey Jacob, you're the WA State Director. Let's get a little bit of a focus on things that are developing there. Lots of states and territories around Australia have conversion therapy laws in place. They don't yet in WA, but there's all sorts of plans advancing towards that. Give us an insight into where things are at and what the Christian Lobby is intending to do over these coming times.
Where we've seen these rolled out, Victoria, New South Wales in particular, we've using those guys there as basically the guide where we can see the plans that the West Australian government have basically looking at modelling from what we've seen. So we don't think that at least a bill getting tabled is preventable. I think a bill in some form will be tabled. Our goal at the moment is to make it as healthy and safe and basically like a bill that's actually going to work without suppressing our religious freedoms and also the freedoms of people to seek help.
Yeah, so in WA, they want to criminalise conversion therapy. And as you say, New South Wales might be the one that everyone's watching. What it means is it criminalises practices where conversion therapy takes place. As Christian believers, we get pretty worried by that because in churches we pray for people. And if prayer is then criminalised, we ought to be speaking up. And so I guess you could say in New South Wales, prayer is criminalised, as I think it is in Victoria. But that's coming for WA. And you're going to be leading a charge here, and I guess getting church leaders on deck and all being singing from the same song sheet's going to be an important thing for you. How are you relating with church leaders in WA?
Yeah, that's going to be the critical thing. I think ultimately what we see in politics is you've got an element of people making the best decision. That's with the information available to them in the politicians. And where you're going to have some that are ideologically opposed to what we feel is a healthy, well-balanced idea. So when that comes to the point of votes is realistically what will speak. And in Western Australia, we've got the last census said there was over 1 million Christians here. And so the church has a much, much, much higher capacity to influence policy than we're currently exercising. So realistically, what that means is to be able to communicate with the churches, let them know just how dangerous this intrusion is. And in real terms, what does it mean? What does it look like? Where the thing is when we're looking at harm and in the sense of conversion therapy, the way it's been framed, there are already laws in place that say assault, illegalizes assault, illegalizes harming people. Like they're already there. So if that's if people are if they're introducing a law that's trying to limit that, well, all they need to do is actually just exercise the laws that are already in place. And where we're seeing the intrusions is what you can pray for in your church. It goes even further is what parents can talk to their kids about and what we're able to preach about. And it's so invasive that it's actually ludicrous when you actually look at it.
Okay, it's invasive, and when you can mobilise Christian leaders to speak together, as you say, the church is actually huge. There are a lot of people who will be on the side of where Christian leaders say they ought to go in all of this. So Christian leaders have a very big pull. There is a drawing of support in all of this, and it takes someone to help bring that together. And I think that's going to be what your job is, just getting these Christian leaders on the same song sheet, as I was saying, but understanding the value of what it is to be able to speak together. You're meeting with Christian leaders, you said, this week.
Yeah, I'll be speaking with some key Christian leaders and giving them a proper insight into what we expect will be tabled to help properly appreciate the consequences if this bill is passed and it goes into law, what that's actually going to mean for the church in real terms. So what we traditionally, Christians, and this is what we've seen, conservative movements, and, I watched the Victorian Police Commissioner presenting this morning, where conservatives and Christians, we typically are more reserved, forgiving, less obtrusive with our opinions. And a lot of the time that done, especially as a pastor, being a pastor myself, it's the mindset and the heart of where Jesus said, you leave the 99 in a safe place and go after the one. So we be delicate around these issues because we genuinely care for the vulnerable person that is. And what the message realistically is, we're told to leave the 99 in a safe place. And when the government's coming to the door, that is no longer a safe place. So we as pastors need to wake up really to the reality that we have our religious freedoms being attacked actively, and we've seen ground being taken against the church in Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia. And when the pastors actually realise how destructive and how controlling being censored in your prayer and your ministry is, once we wake up to that, and what I'm seeing from the East Coast is these guys are becoming aware of it now that the law's already passed, and they're like, hang on, this is terrible. How can we have let this happen? And so realistically, we need to unite our leaders, the Christian leaders, and a lot of that is going to be public awareness, and then them reflecting that through their congregations, their denominations and their congregations.
As you say, you've got church leaders who are shepherds of a flock. I mean, wonderful analogy. It's just historic. It's the way we think of, obviously, around about, the Christian church.
The word pastor is actually the word shepherd.
Yes. So if these sorts of laws are passing through our parliaments and our church leaders say nothing, they're not actually shepherding the flock in the way that we would expect them to. Is there some sort of expectation you think that, that you can gently and respectfully relay to your Christian leadership that has an anticipation that, hey, wait a minute, I thought your job was to be the shepherd here. Any thoughts from you? I'm taking you down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I know you've got a heart in this place here. But so, Jacob, for our leaders actually, this is an interesting thing because some might not recognise the power that they do have, but it's a very influential power when you're appointed to a role of leadership in a church, whether it's just a congregation or it's a denomination. Very, very powerful role, but you're a shepherd and you've got some responsibility. What are your feelings and thoughts here?
Well, 100%. And this one of the things that we talk about, the separation of church and state. And somewhere along the way, it's actually gotten flipped where the church shouldn't be involved in policy, where that idea actually came from the notion that spiritual office is higher than government office. That's the reality. If you look at any of the Christian doctors or whatever, it's Reverend Doctor. It's not Doctor Reverend. And that's an order of hierarchy in the sense of authority realm. Like in the Christian realm, we understand you've got God, his church, and then the government is not higher than and so when we've got pastors need to, and you've got to do it, they have to be very, do it intelligently and carefully, but they need to realise that their primary responsibility is to look at, like Jesus said to Peter, then feed my sheep. Do you love me? Then feed my sheep. Do you love me? Then feed my sheep. And so that's our top priority as Christian leaders, and even yours in your platform. It's the same. It's the same difference. And these guys, what I think, need permission, even in an understanding that it's actually not improper for me to communicate to my congregation or to my denomination what is going on politically, how we suggest people respond to it, how we suggest people process it or navigate or properly understand for themselves what's going on. It's actually, like you said the word shepherd, it's Jesus said, you worry about the one after you have the 99 in a safe place. Your primary responsibility as a shepherd is to look after the people inside your care and then looking outside the walls. So, I'm part of the Australian Christian Churches, my ordination is, and we're very much outward focused and very much, looking to help people meet Jesus. But we do have to appreciate that our primary responsibility is to feed my sheep, which comes down to making sure that the church is a safe place, and the government does not have the right to intrude in the church. That's impinging on our religious freedoms. And understanding the separation of church and state, that's actually the proper context for that idea.
And, in church life, where you've got Christian leaders, different denominations, some in small churches, some in big churches, nobody tells each other what to do. Nobody tells each other what to think. We want our leaders to be critically thinking about the issues that are going on in our communities. I love your heartbeat when you say it's not improper for me to communicate to the flock. I mean, that just sort of cuts through this whole idea of it's something about manipulation. But the flock needs to be able to understand what's going on so that the flock can then be prayerful and then take their own actions as to how these things look. Because criminalising Christian prayer, and I mean, if that doesn't strike a chord with you and say something's wrong, if that's what your government's trying to do, then, you need to look a little bit more carefully about the things that are happening. And in WA, this is warming along. It may well appear any time that a debate will start over these conversion therapy laws. And I guess those Christian leaders are going to need support from the people who are sitting in their congregations, warming the pews. Maybe we're called to more than just warming pews on a Sunday. Hey, there's other big things happening too, and I don't want to waste all the time talking about just one issue. In WA, you've got a government who are pulling chaplaincy support from public school principals. What's been happening there at your end, Jacob?
So this is a beautiful, beautiful program that our state school principals have absolutely embraced, to the extent when so just a tiny little snapshot of this function. So your chaplaincy branches have actually Youth Care, which is probably the main service provider for chaplaincy in Western Australia. They've provided a dedicated staff member to serve as the chaplain to the state school principals, and they do a tremendous amount of work through WA. And the size of WA, our regional schools are very, very isolated. Our regional communities are very isolated. So those guys particularly have received great value from this service. Now, last year, the state government provided a 3-year funding contract, and that finished last year, and they were not going to renew it. And the public school principals lobbied themselves. I'm not talking about the state school principals themselves were so vocal and so present that the state government continued that for 12 months. Now, there has been no sign of them further extending that. Now, one of the challenges is, and this is where I think we can start to really, really just be concerned and understanding that there is much bigger things in motion here. So in that interim period, while there was a 12-month funding, the state school principals have been gagged, and as far as approaching government directly, they are not allowed to, by the education department, have put a gag on them to directly lobby politicians. State school principals are not allowed to lobby politicians on education matters. Now, so what that means, they can't stand up for themselves in this, where they so vocally cried out for it when the funding was canned. They've been given a 12-month reprieve, and there again now is no plan in sight for this program to be funded by the government, and the principals are now not allowed to ask for it by their own department. So what we see, this is starting to step back the funding of chaplaincy across the board.
Wow. Okay. There are activists who would like to see the end of chaplaincy. That's all around Australia. We're talking about what's going on in WA. You've got principals, not even Christian ones, who are recognising the value of it. They said, we need chaplaincy, and the government said, we'll give you 12 months more funding. So those activists now have pulled another lever and said, well, why don't we gag the principals so they can't have the same argument next time? So what are you hoping that listeners in WA might do to respond to that? Is there any action they can take?
Yeah, there is a petition that's been tabled, the parliamentary petition that's live at the moment, which if they go to the acl.org.au website and go to the WA issues. They can click on that, send them straight through to the petition, and can put their name, and their details to say, hey, essentially, if you the old putting your name on signing your signature on the paper petition, 21st century, the computer, digital. So, but that's in real terms, that actually helps, where it's not the silver bullet, but what it does do, it says we care, and there is a substantial amount of the constituency that this matters to. And, so when the people do, the politicians are able to use that as a evidence that, hey, this isn't just the whoever wants to be the godfatherers or whatever. We've actually got a substantial amount of people who are happy to put their name to this, put skin in the game, and say, hey, we value our state school principals having that care available to them.
Well, I think every listener in WA right now might be thinking, I might just not just listen and be entertained by some great insights coming from Jacob Hill. Here's something you can do immediately. You can go to the ACL website. You can find that petition, and I think there's other petitions there too that listeners might like to explore, and we might not get a chance to talk about those today, but certainly on this issue around chaplaincy, there's a petition there, and you can sign it, and you can be supportive of the good work that's happening with the Australian Christian Lobby. Now, that website, very easy to remember, Australian Christian Lobby, acl.org.au. Go to the ACL website, acl.org.au, find that petition and participate in there. You'll be able to prayerfully look at that petition and look at the details before you put your name to it. But then, in whatever way you can, send a note to Jacob Hill, encouraging him, because he's doing an incredible job in Western Australia. He's in there and he's in the battle. There is a battle that's going on. When there's those authorities that want to criminalise Christian practice, you've got Jacob Hill, who's on that front line. Jacob, God's special grace and blessing on you as you actually are in your role. Jacob, thanks so much for taking some time to share these thoughts in an update today with our listeners today on 2020.
Well, my pleasure, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.